Hey there, my name's Rod Yates, and you are listening to Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. This is where I talk to music creators and industry professionals about their lives and careers, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned along the way. And my guest today is singer, songwriter, and activist John Butler. Years before the sold-out shows and the #1 albums, John Butler would turn up at the Fremantle markets and he'd busk. And it was there that he learned about commanding a crowd and about the art of playing live and of the possibilities of a career as an independent musician. Since then, he's gone on to tour the world and release a number of hugely successful albums with the John Butler Trio. But as he admits in this interview, for the first 10 years of that ride, he was pretty much just holding on for dear life, never really stopping to take stock or deal with any of his niggling personal baggage. That all changed in 2015 when he and his partner Danielle Caruana took their 2 children and moved to the southwest of Western Australia, which is where John actually grew up after moving from America as a child. And for the first time in a long time, he slowed down long enough to feel the full weight of his demons. It was a period that informed much of John's 2018 album Home. And in this interview, he talks frankly and openly about those personal issues and about the challenges he's faced throughout his career. He also talks about his upbringing and the alienation he felt when he arrived in Australia, why he connected deeply with the Indigenous community, and how he went from a skateboard-loving kid to a world-renowned musician. But we started by talking about his memories of the first day he set foot in Australia.
I came in 1986. We landed on January 26, 1986. They like to call Australia Day. But the day they will eventually change, the day of. But landed in 1986. It was blisteringly hot. Landed in Sydney. The guy at the customs said, "Oh, you lucked out. We just banned the cane in the schools." And I was like, "Oh, excellent. Thanks for that." Hopped in a Datsun 120Y, drove down to Melbourne to see my cousins. Because my dad, we moved back because my dad's Australian.
Yeah.
He's one of 8 children. And then we drove across the Nullarbor Plain, where I saw camel trains and road trains that would make you literally get off the side of the road. Like they forced you off the road onto the gravel so they could overtake. They just come at you. They just come right at you. They pull out in front of you about K out, and you just have to get off the road. It was the freakiest thing ever. Six-wheeler camel trains with people who didn't want photos taken of them. It was like, I swear to God, I thought I landed in the land of Mad Max. I really did. The flies drilled through your jeans. And then we arrived in Mandurah to just those postcard kind of, waters, those crystal clear waters that I hadn't seen growing up in LA. And then, proceeded to go to Pinjarra.
Yeah. Interesting
Story about Pinjarra is, almost 20 years later after moving to Pinjarra, I found out that my great-great-grandfather was buried. Was it great-great-grandfather his great-great-grandfather was buried in an unmarked grave in Pinjarra. And so we moved for no other reason to Pinjarra because I wanted to live on the river. I told Dad to find a place with a river in the backyard, jokingly. And because it was the right price. He looked everywhere around and everything was too expensive. And he thought, oh man, I must just go back to LA. And then he found this place in Pinjarra. And lo and behold, my great-great-grandfather was buried in an unmarked grave in that place. It was kind of like salmon swimming back upstream, in a lot of ways.
Was that coincidental, or was he aware of that?
No one in the family was aware of it until I did Who Do You Think You Are?
Right.
The ancestry kind of show. And that's when I found out, literally 20 years after moving there.
Yeah. So is your head spinning at this point when you talk about driving across the Nullarbor Plain and arriving in Sydney and it being blisteringly hot? Like, what's going on in your mind, do you think?
Oh, I mean, a lot. What's going on in my mind? I'm 11 years old. My parents just got completely divorced in a pretty shitty divorce. And I'm now moving out of LA County and leaving my brother, who's 18, and said, see ya to my parents, later. And leaving all my best friends and the street I grew up to go move to the most isolated capital city on the planet.
Yeah.
and then moved 3 hours outside of that, no, maybe an hour and a half actually outside of that, to a place called Pinjarra, which was a beautiful town with a beautiful river called Murray River, the Murray River there. But it was also a very xenophobic, homophobic, misogynistic, racist, segregated town as well. So it was coming from multicultural LA to all-white school with 2 Indigenous kids, it was a bit of a spin out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you fit in there?
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't fit in. It took a long time to kind of carve my own little niche. I think I kind of had worked the system. By the time I was in year 11 and 12, I had a good regime of wagging school, self-medication, my dad's signature, and getting, A- grade point averages. And I was like, I'd worked out the system, but it took years of running away from bullies and finding my own little piece of the pie. And it was the best thing. It was like the hardest times and the best thing that ever happened to me. That's where I connected with the Noongar people of Pinjarra, the indigenous, people of that town and of that region. And that's when I started learning about Dreamtime stories. And I felt a lot of affiliation is the wrong word, but I felt very outcasted in Pinjarra, and the town was almost properly segregated in so many ways. And once I met Eric Herbert and the Kearing family in Pinjarra, I felt like in some way I kind of found my people. I felt my outcast. I was like, I don't belong here, and these people are being treated the same way, even though they've been here longer than anybody else. And so, I spent many a night, at the Kearing house, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about all kinds of things. It's strange, to be a white person on the white part of town, you'd never complain about, police corruption or complaining about racism, but you be in an Aboriginal person's house at 1 o'clock in the morning on the dark side of town, and you'll see the cops pull up on the front lawn, not the front driveway, but the front lawn, and park 2 meters away from the bedroom window and leave the brights on for 15 minutes and then just drive off again. Meanwhile, I'm trying to jump the back fence of the bloody place. Like, what's going to just calm down? This happens all the time, John. And so I saw a few things like that, and I feel really blessed, actually. As much as it saddens me and angers me and pisses me off, and it was a very great big eye-opener on how far we have to go.
Yeah. So your eyes were opened very early.
Yeah, like forced open.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was hard. It was good, though.
Yeah. So you're not only dealing with this geographical shift, but also there's presumably some quite a big emotional shift as well with your parents just having
cultural,
divorced.
Geological, geographical, sorry. Yeah, metaphysical. Yeah, it was all happening. Yeah. Parents, yeah.
Yeah. What was emotionally, how did their split affect you?
Oh, I think, I hate to assume how every child is affected by divorce, but, as a 10 or 11-year-old, your parents are your world. Your family is your world. Like, that is your reality. And when they choose not to be together, it's a very terrible feeling, I found. It's just like, what is the equivalent as an adult? What is the equivalent as an adult? I don't know. It'd be, I don't know. It's I don't know. It's very monumental and kind of I can't explain it. It'd be like somebody telling me, we're not gonna have summer anymore, folks, or something, or the Earth's flat or something. Your parents breaking up. It's like it's
massive.
It's massive. It was massive for me, at least. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you were out here at 11 when you moved out here. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's a pivotal age for you. But I understand 11 was a pivotal age for your father as well. Is that correct?
9.
9, okay.
Yeah, 9 was.
That was when he was...
So I'm thinking that's when my parents started getting divorced, is 9 as well. So it's interesting. Dad has his trauma about his father dying in 1958 in a bushfire in Nannup, Western Australia. And that was massive for him. Yeah. So I don't know if you know, it sounds like you know a little bit about it, but, you know.
Please explain.
For good radio, whatever this is. So in 1958, one of the state's largest bushfires on record erupted just outside of a place called Nannup. And my grandfather lived at the forestry workers camp at Willow Springs with his family of 8 children and his wife, who was a Greek-Bulgarian woman who he met in World War II in Alexandria, Egypt. And he went out to fight this fire with a whole group of people, a whole community of people, and him and 3 other men didn't return and left my grandmother widowed and with 8 kids who just lost their father. The eldest being 10, the youngest being about 1. So that's like ground zero. You know, for like almost every bit of baggage there is in my family.
Really?
You can really tie it all back to that moment in a way.
Really?
You know? Yeah. You know, you get those pivotal moments where they just kind of, it's like the glass fractures. It shatters, you know. It holds together, but it shatters, and you can actually go, you can follow all the lines back to a spot. Yeah.
And there's a song on Home, Coffee, Methadone and Cigarettes, where I think that you actually address your father's heartbreak at his dad's passing. Was that what that song was that inspired that song?
Totally, but it's a true story. There's a little bit of metaphor in there to make for good poetry, but all the metaphors are exactly true as well. That's my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point songwriting starts for you at about the age of 16? I believe.
Yeah.
What was going on in your life that made you that made that an outlet? Was it everything you've just told me about?
I think it's everything I just told you.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom came over 6 months later after we moved, and my parents then got back and forth together for the next 10 years, you know, mixed with, you know, domestic violence and all kinds of shit that happened, and restraining orders and fucking, you name it, it was on.
That must have a giant impact on you, or must have had a giant impact on you.
Yeah, it's had a massive impact on me. I think that and moving to Pinjarra was just like the two pivotal, like, it was the deep end. And so music was just my mate. Music was like the journal entry, you know, the diary, and it was a way to express how I felt about everything that was going on in me and everything that was going on around me. And it really hasn't changed. It's still my best mate, and it still helps me do everything, you know, express all the things that are inside of me and outside of me, sometimes things I can't actually express in any other way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first song that you wrote?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first verse. You know, it's, you know, it echoes of some of the naivety that was going to come later on. It was, why are there so many clouds in the sky when it's a bright and sunny day? Why do so many people have to die to show it doesn't have to be this way? It was really, that's what I wrote on this nylon guitar. I can't remember anything else. I probably got to that line and I was like, oh, I'm already over this song. But, yeah, that was the first of many, and you know, lots of girlfriend angst and, you know, breakups, and, you know, the anger, a lot of anger about the powers that be, and you know, all the stuff that came, you know, later. Yeah,
you're a deep thinker at that, even at the age of 16, coming up with those lyrics.
I wanted to be in the special forces from the time I was 2 years old until the time I was 13, I was very much a great product of the American propaganda, which is be all you can be and make the world a better place and bring justice and you know, save humanity through the military complex, industrial complex. And I remember my dad always just told me, you know, like, this is all good. You know, he helped me make guns in the shed, and my dad was a carpenter. I learned a lot about shed life and building things with my hands from my dad. My dad would always also say, "It's like, no way I'm going to let you go overseas and die for, you know, oil company, a rich white guy, and, you know, the International Monetary Fund." And I'm gonna be like, I don't know what you're on about, you know. But by the time you're 16, you know, those things start seeping in, and then you start realizing, you know, if I was to retrospect and I kind of do some time traveling, I look at my grandmother. So my father's mother, who is the grandchild of somebody who fought in an uprising in Bulgaria for his own freedom and his own culture. And so you see these rebels, throughout my lineage. And so it was only a matter of time before all that kind of rhetoric and the way of seeing the world was going to kind of infiltrate my mind. So
Sure.
I think between the divorce, Pinjera, being outcasted, seeing the indigenous and non-indigenous divide, the war stuff that I was talking about with my dad, and then having music, it just like, it was inevitable that I was going to be like thinking about shit a little bit deeper, because you walk into a pub or you walk into a party and everything's fine until you open your mouth and people hear your American accent, which I still get reminded to this day about. And all of a sudden you end up running out 5 minutes later because there's a mob of people wanting to bash you up in a group bashing kind of situation. When that happens to you enough, you start thinking deeply and projecting into the future and start kind of analyzing situations a little bit deeper. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I'm dealing with the bad part of it now, which is like, I see everything as a threat. So I got things to work on. It's getting deeper. But I think a bit too deep at times.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. After the break, John looks back on his entry into the world of busking and recalls a conversation he had with a disappointed fan and the impact it had on his career. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my conversation with John Butler. The role of John's grandmother in his life can't be overstated, and we pick up the conversation talking about her and the influence she had on him.
Oh, she was the matriarch, like one of a few matriarchs down my line. She's the one who ended up raising 8 kids without a husband in the southwest of Western Australia as a Greek Bulgarian woman, aka in those times Wog. So, she's a tough woman. She's a tough woman. She came to this country, having grown up in Alexandria, Egypt. She came to this country speaking 6 languages.
Wow.
Immensely international, multicultural, cosmopolitan woman, moving to like Witchcliff and Northcliffe in Western Australia. It's like it's a, beautiful places, but towns that could barely even deal with the fact that there were indigenous people who were there before them, let alone like people who could speak 6 languages and like knew about the world around them, and so she's a badass. She was a badass, and she raised some amazing kids in a pretty hard situation.
Right.
Yeah. But tough.
Yeah.
Stubborn. Stubborn. A little too stubborn, but
okay.
A sweetheart. Yeah.
She
gave me my grandfather's guitar. My grandfather played slide. He played a dobro. Every kid of hers tried to learn how to play guitar, so they'd receive that guitar because that was the deal. If you learned how to play the guitar, you could receive this Excalibur, so to speak, and it was stuck in the rock since the fire, essentially. And every kid tried to get the rock, guitar out of the rock, and no one did. And I stumbled along at the age of 16, named after this guy, John Francis Wiltshire Butler, and I liked playing guitar. I didn't want the guitar. I had no interest in slide music or anything, but I had interest in my grandmother saw it and she gave it to me. So yeah, she has a huge role to play, in all of our lives, but especially, for me, especially in mine. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that guitar ended up actually helping shape your sound. Is that fair to say?
Well, I'd say it's fair to say that it knew what I was going to do before I did. Strangely enough, I got that guitar given to me, and I felt like I was completely unworthy of it. I just actually quit playing guitar because my first guitar teacher decided not to teach me anymore, but keep on teaching all my friends.
Why?
And I don't know. He's just a kook, I guess. I don't know. I mean, like, I was massively into being I wanted to be a professional skateboarder. I had pictures of skateboards all over my wall and skulls all over my walls and feathers and, you know, I mean, that's the way my house still looks. I still have skulls everywhere and feathers everywhere. But like, and I think he was a highly religious, orthodox religious man. And I think I spun him out. But my friends didn't spin him out for some reason. I don't know why. Anyways, and I remember being a weird time with me and a few of my mates around that whole scene, like high school is. And
yeah,
I just was like, fuck this. Fuck all you.
Yeah.
Fuck him. Fuck guitar. And then I got given this dobro. I was like, oh, God, really? Fuck. And I just went under my bed for 2 years, 3 years. And then I picked up the guitar again, found a new teacher. And then, you know, just kind of messed around.
Yeah.
And then it was just a diary entry kind of thing, you know. And then 21, discovered open tuning. Open tuning, you can play Celtic music, you can play Indian music, you also can play blues music.
Mm-hmm.
You put a pipe on your finger and it sounds pretty good on a guitar tuned to open tuning. You put it on a dobro tuned to open tuning and it sounds awesome. It sounds amazing. And I was like, oh, here I am with you and this guitar. I get it. Thanks. Thanks for waiting for me, you know? Yeah.
So if you're into skate growing up, presumably there was a punk element to what you were listening to. And
no, not a lot of punk. I wasn't listening to a lot of punk. I was listening to a lot of alternative music. I mean, I still skate to this day. Me and my boys still skate. And I was listening to lots of Cure. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to lots of Beastie Boys. But I was listening to also lots of, like, I had every Morrissey and, you know, Smith's album. And, you know, then De La Soul entered, you know, the scene. So listening to NWA and, you know, then it was Pearl Jam and Nirvana, of course, and you know, and then Bob Marley and Jimi Hendrix was always there. Jimi Hendrix Experience and Bob, and it kind of grew out of that. Jane's Addiction, massive fan of Jane's Addiction and The Cure and stuff, and so yeah. And then I always loved listening to Jolene, you know, at the same time, you know, which was probably the most uncoolest thing you could have done as a 15-year-old back in the day. Now it's the coolest thing you could do. But yeah, I used to just love the finger picking in Jolene. Okay. The finger picking it always really got me. And I went to my rock guitar teacher and was like, "Can you teach me? I know this is going to seem really daggy to you because you teaching all of us to play Led Zeppelin and stuff, but listen to this finger picking. This is heavy. This is heavy stuff." And he couldn't work it out, and I still haven't been able to work it out, but that was the moment I was like, finger picking is something very cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, around this time, sort of in your late teens, early 20s, like art teaching was something on your horizon. Is that right? You had...
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, once love overcame the war in me, and literally how that happened was, like, I had a cubby house full of all my toy guns, and I was in love with Tabitha Redrow, who was in year 8, and I was still in year 6. She was at high school, and I was playing with guns still, so I kept it really secret, and she came to visit me one day, and I kept her away from my cubby house all day, but she lost her shoes. At the end of the day, I remember she lost her shoes, and her mom was over picking her up, and we're looking for her shoes everywhere, and I said, look, I couldn't find them. I'm like, okay, look, I'm just gonna look in the cubby, and there were her shoes. I remember, I still have the image in my head. This is my cubby house. It's full of toy guns. You know, it's a boy's place still. Meanwhile, I'm going out with a young woman in high school, and her shoes were in the middle of the cubby house. And I remember just like, oh my God, I feel so. This is horrible. This is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen. She's gonna think I'm a kid. I remember getting out of Army really quick after that. But after that point, I just wanted to do something I loved, you know. And so the next thing was skateboarding for ages, and then going to high school. You know, the most condoned form of child abuse at high school is a 25 to 35-year-old adult telling a 14 to 16-year-old that they need to know what they have to do for the rest of their life, which I think is the biggest load of shit you could possibly ever do to a young person. Because half the people asking and forcing them to, you know, come up with an answer don't even know what they want to do for the rest of their lives. And so I came to the fact, well, I want to do what I love and make money, I guess. Fuck. And for me, I was a visual artist, and I still am, and I love painting, and I love sculpting, and I love making stuff with my hands and drawing. And So I said, cool. Well, I can't, at that point I was trying to be a bit pragmatic, and I was like, well, I can't guarantee I'm going to be a famous artist, because I kind of hit failure with skateboarding. I went to Santa Barbara and skated for Pal Peralta and the Bones Brigade, tour manager, to see if I could get sponsored by my most favorite company in the world. And I didn't get sponsored. I wasn't consistent enough. I wasn't good enough, essentially.
When was that?
I don't know. Maybe it's 15, 16. But I was like heavily into it. Like everything I get into, I'm kind of obsessive compulsive about. And so I think I was a little bit more realistic about about being a professional artist. And I was like, cool, I want to do art. But, worst case scenario, I can be an art teacher, which means I can still be an artist and influence children. Fuck, my best teachers were art teachers. They got me through. If I could just do that, awesome.
Yeah.
And I went to Curtin University for a year to get my art degree and discovered open tuning at the same time and decided to borrow my friend's battery-powered amplifier and just give playing what I was writing a shot in the markets.
Yeah. In the Fremantle markets.
In the Fremantle markets. Very much like what Trent Humphreys and this band he was in called Wanjo were doing, which was like they'd play this kind of Celtic instrumental music. And I was like, I remember coming up to Fremantle from Pinjarra as a kid and watching those guys play with their massive dreads and gypsy fucking Celtic thing, the awesomeness that we're doing. And I thought, oh, now I have something maybe I can do, come at something similar. And then that first hour I made $30, which was the job I had before that. I was making $5 cash an hour. And I thought something went off in my head, which was, oh, this is doing what you love and like making a decent wage. Something. And there's a couple of things that happened around that time afterwards that really cemented it. I started playing it. Once that happened, I played the next day, and then I played every week. I bought my own amps, and then I would go there at 8:00 in the morning on Friday morning, and I'd play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It didn't matter what party it was on the night before, how late I went to bed. I was like always going to be at the pitch at 8:00. And then this woman came up to me and goes, Do you have a tape? And I was like, no, I don't have a tape. I'm getting your marriage because you got something. You should really do that. People should take you home. I'm like, you're great. You're right. I'll do that. And kept on noodling away. And 5 months later, she came back. Do you have that tape? And I said, oh no, I'm gonna get around to it though. I'm gonna get around to it. She goes, okay, you really should. And then she came back a third time, a few months later. And I said, yeah, no, I haven't yet. And her face dropped. She walked away and shook her head. And I remember that moment was like, wow, I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth or however you say it. I'm taking the piss out of my own talent and out of my own potential. And that was really a positive moment in my life when she just was like, oh, you're going to be one of those dudes, are you? And I was like, no, I'm not going to be one of those dudes. I'm not going to be one of those dudes. I'm going to be the guy who actually creates his own reality and makes it happen. And so that was the next week I recorded my first cassette.
Yeah.
And then it just galloped,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you made that cassette and you actually started selling some copies, do you remember the feeling when someone actually bought one?
Yeah.
Like the first one you sold?
It's amazing. It's still amazing. Like, I haven't busked in ages. But I feel like it's one of the most honest ways of making a living ever, because everybody who passes you is on their way somewhere else. You are not part of their plan. You are not part of their daily projection of what they wanted to do today. You had no fathom. You didn't fathom in their whole projection. And the fact that you could snare them on the way to pass, like you're hooking them, and you got their attention, and they've stopped. Now they've stopped on their way to somewhere else. You've stopped them, and you've held them for maybe 10 minutes, and then they buy a cassette for $10. Instead of throwing 20-cent coin down, they're giving you a $10 bill. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy good. That it doesn't actually get better than that. Like still to this day, it doesn't. I mean, there's other things that can rival it with my threshold of like adrenaline, but yeah, that was it. That was the moment where I was like, this is real. I can make a living out of this. I could travel the country and do something like this. I could buy a trolley that actually has inflatable tires. This shit could possibly really happen for me. I literally thought that. I was like, I'm going to pimp out my next trolley badass, and I'm going to put a swag on it, and then I'm going to go across the Nullarbor Plain, and I'm going to like be able to play. I'm going to be the gypsy I've always wanted to be. So it didn't happen that way. But
what mechanisms did you learn when you were busking to make people stop? Were there certain things that you learned?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I was not singing. I mean, I was writing. I wrote before I ever started writing instrumentals. I wrote for 4 years songs, and then at 21, I discovered open tuning, and then started writing instrumentals. And I'd seen 1,001 people singing songs on the street and singing covers, and I had no interest in that. And I also didn't see that they had a lot of traction. But the instrumentals, like as I said, the people like Trent Humphreys and Wanjo and all these instrumental artists who were doing something really interesting. Had crowds and crowds, and were selling CDs. I mean, they weren't selling cassettes; they were selling CDs. They were big time, you know. And so, yeah, that was one of the techniques. The other one was just like heads down, bum up, just fucking, you know, get into it. Like, and so, yeah, I wouldn't look at them. I would just tie my clapping sticks into my boots. Turn up my amp way too loud, probably, and just cuss it, you know, like get into what I was doing, and that was the best thing because I just learned so much. I was playing guitar 8 hours a day, and just learning, cutting my teeth, and you know, learning heaps. And I'd look up and there'd be a crowd around me, and I'd be like. And then I'd say, you know, that's the beginning of the birth of the independent musician for me. It was like, you know, I'm performing. Now I go, hello, everybody. I'm here. I got some cassettes here. The $10 donations are, you know, muchly appreciated. On John Butler. You know, and there was the publicist, and then, you know, and then I'd sell it, and then all of a sudden I was the record company. I was selling it, and then I'd take all that money in, and I'd make sure I'd always put the first 300 away to make my next 100 cassettes, you know, and cover my costs and cover that. And then, you know, and every Friday morning I hit the photocopying shop right next to the markets at the time, which was so convenient. And I think about it because it's not there anymore. And I'd make all my covers and cut them out with the guillotine and stick them all in the cassettes and get my 100 or so cassettes ready for the day. And it was like, it was the mini industry, you know?
Yeah. So that's like super pivotal. That's like you realizing that actually I can do this myself,
Totally.
Which is pretty much what you based your entire career on.
Yeah. And then I had great inspirations like the Waifs, who you know, when I first went on tour with them as a solo artist a few years later, you know, I'd never heard of the Waifs, but they were playing at 2 nights of the Governor Hindmarsh in Adelaide. Sold out. They had a whole merch line. They were playing 3 nights at the Hi-Fi bar and bloody, you know, I mean, that, you know, UMI was playing 2 nights. They were playing 3 nights, and no one had ever even heard of them. They weren't even on the radio.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, what is happening here? What is going on here? I do not understand what's happening here. Who are you, and who are these people who know you? You know, because there's a lot of them who know you. And I learned about that, and that's when I learned about touring.
What did you learn?
Fucking work, tour, and keep on touring. I've been touring for 20 freaking years, man. Relationship with audience, becoming part of their folklore, becoming part of their lives, becoming part of their memories. The only way you can do that, I have several CDs that have definitely ingrained into my life. But, you know, when you get the chills in the audience, when I've gotten the chills in the audience, I feel like something special is going on. Something I can't put my finger on either. It's quite divine. There's some divinity in it. And it's happened a few times. I've been in the audience and cried. I've been in the audience and gotten full body shivers and like, woo. I think if you can do that to people, they're always going to want to come back for that hit.
Yeah.
That's a drug, and it's a beautiful drug, and it's one that gives you a sense of hope and a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Of like, what are we part of? This is magical. It is magical. So I saw them do that, and I had those moments watching them, And yeah, I was like, this is how it's done, isn't it? Is this how? And then I realized throughout the years that's how it's always been done, by people like us, at least.
Sure.
Like not non-pop mainstream artists. I mean, I've had the lovely, lovely privilege to go number one and to be on pop radio and all those things. But essentially the tradition I come from and the style of music I make is we make folk music, which is for the people. And folk musicians move from town to town sharing to the folk.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we do, That's where it lives. That's where it thrives. That's how it's best. That's how it best flourishes.
After the break, John talks about the coping mechanisms he's developed to deal with success and what it was like raising his family on the road. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my conversation with John Butler. One of the most exciting phases in any artist's career is when they first start to taste success. And for John, that came in the early 2000s with the release of the albums 3 and Sunrise Over Sea, records which effectively changed his life. And we pick up the conversation talking about the coping mechanisms he had to develop to deal with those changes.
No, I've only started doing that now, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's taken a while. No, I just held on. I made this commitment around my first CD. I was hanging around a whole bunch of activists. Sorry, I look everywhere else when I'm talking. I'm sorry.
It's okay, that's all right.
I was hanging around a whole bunch of activists who are saving the Southwest forest from being wood chipped for less than $1 a ton. And these are big old trees, big beautiful old places. And all my mates were doing that, and I was looking at my posters and trying to work out if my photo shoot looked good enough on the cover of my album, and it felt very vacuous and self-indulgent. And I remember around that time I said to myself, if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to make sure it's part of something better and bigger and that would contribute to society. And when I did that, it was like it was like I was on the horse, I was making the prayer to the universe, and then somebody went and slapped the horse's ass really hard, and it just bolted. And I think throughout those first years, that first decade, I just held on.
Right.
I was fucking just it was galloping really quickly, and I held on, and I held on with complete tunnel vision, and I held on with, all my other stuff that I was holding on with too, which was just my baggage and all my anger and fucking, People, it was always the funny thing about it. I was like, oh, you play laid back coastal music and all laid back roots rock and all this. I was like, fucking laid back, huh? Like, I'm so not the laid back guy. So always, me and my first bands, we were all really angry dudes, Yeah. Had something to prove to the world. And yeah. So I didn't have any coping mechanisms.
Okay.
Luckily I've found Danielle, and Danielle found me, and we got busy making a family really quick. We were 27 when we had our kids and our first child, and we wanted to see if we could do this family thing on the road, and we did, and it was really huge, and it was really amazing, and it was really, really hard, and I think my family kind of kept me on the ground a little bit, but I look back, and at the same time, I think I kind of dragged my family through a lot of it as well without really realizing. But
sure.
Yeah. We both did it, we both did it voluntarily, but we look back and go, fuck. Whoa, lucky we're here,
Really?
Yeah, we traveled with 2 kids globally, 10 months a year for 10 years. Wow. Before there were ever any freaking, biodegradable nappies, we had cloth nappies in buckets. Oh, and for 10 months a year for 10 years,
wow.
It's hard to get your mind around that workload and what that does to your world and in your life. Sure. And at the same time, having been a number one artist over here and starting at the ground in America and trying to make try to make waves in America, your ship can be sunk by the political and socio-economic ripples of the country. Like ripples. Like I've seen many a band be sunk and spat out and thrown back. And so we spent 10 years in that country not making any money. I just invested everything out of Australia into overseas, and we worked our asses off because of that same thing that you mentioned before, because of, why not this is how we can do it, why not? And so we did, but it was intensive.
Yeah. Were there moments you felt discouraged through that, or did you have tunnel vision?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we had some great luck with Atlantic Records over there, and when Time Warner's and Atlantic merged, which is just after Better Than, which was on number one on AAA radio over there, which is like the lowest form of radio format, and then you go to like commercial, then you can go to pop, and that's where you start. We were number one for like 5 weeks on that, and things were really good. And then Time Warner and Atlantic merged, and we just lost our whole team. And then that happened, and then Napster was happening, and downloading was happening, and we were just touring our asses off, playing to 2,000 people over here, trying to scrape 300 to 500 in America. But good things were going on. It's so much harder, we had good traction in Europe and America, but like you're dealing with population densities, which is just the ratios are just, the amount of energy it takes to get it warmed up is, and you don't have Triple J's who are just going to simulcast you across the country all at one go. You have to go to every town, getting that radio, getting that antenna to just pump you enough into that neighborhood, and then the next, and then zip it all up. So yeah, it took a lot of energy,
And you had your kids with you.
And we had kids.
Homeschooling the kids, presumably?
In the beginning. I mean, my boy was on tour with me last year. He was out of school all year last year. We had a tutor out with us, and so we still do it from time to time. Yeah. We just thought, let's give it a shot. We were really inspired by a woman named Jackie Gaia, who is a real pivotal music woman in Melbourne, especially in more of the underground scene and in the Indigenous scene. And we asked her, she raised her kids on the road, and we said, do you think we could do it? And she said, yeah, you should do it. I remember we went off all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and naive and decided to raise a family on the road, and and yeah, we did. We're together still. We still have it's amazing. But it took a lot of work.
No, that's great.
It took a lot of unpacking too.
Okay.
As far as just that it's pretty intense, this kind of lifestyle, to tour that much for that long, and at some point in time there's gonna be water under the bridge, and you're gonna go, whoa, hey, thanks for like coming out for that long with me. And yeah, I know there's things that you wanted to do as well, and I know it's kind of 10 years later, I'm only asking now. I mean, I'm exaggerating. I always supported her dreams, but it was pretty intense becoming parents and falling into the same 1950s paradigm of, you're going to be the child-rearing mother, and I'm going to be the bread-earning. There's all kinds of things going on. In those 10 years, and we were making a career, and it was amazing.
And then you said that you held on for those first 10 years, and then everything you were just talking then about that, I guess Danielle supporting your career, and so when you moved to the south of Western Australia in 2015, I think that's when things swapped a little bit. Is it you were going to step back for a little bit, Danielle was going to focus on her career a little bit? I kind of got the impression that for the first time in a long time you stopped.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I mean, Dan had already started her career,
of course,
about 5 or 6 years beforehand. About 5 or 6 years before that, I think 4 or 5 years before that, she said, "Look, I'm not going to come out on the road 10 months a year anymore. I can do 3. I can come out for 3." She said, "I'm not going to come out, but I don't want to be away from you for any longer than 3." I was like, "Oh, okay, good call.
Yeah,
I appreciate it." But she'd been making albums on the side. We wanted to move back to the Southwest, and I was like, I'm gonna take a year off and set the place up, and I did. I set the place up, and we both set the place up, and then she just was having great flow with what she was doing, and I really, throughout the years, have quite attuned to when things are flowing and not, I guess. And so I saw her flowing, and mine wasn't flowing for a whole myriad of reasons, and I just was happy to move to Melbourne for a second. homeschool Jolly and let her record her album, and just go with the flow. And
I guess in that period, in the last couple of years, you've been quite open about the anxiety that you struggled with, or I guess you dealt with during the process of making Home. And I've seen you use phrases like broken coping mechanisms, childhood baggage, and being greeted by old demons you thought you'd lost in the fray. What were some of those old demons?
I'm still going through all that. I'm still working through it all. I think, what I can boil down now is that I've always gotten anxious, and I look at my father, and he's always gotten anxious. I'm like, okay, this is the thing. I can see it more clearly than ever, and as I said, I was a really angry dude back in the day, and I'm a pretty intense guy even now. Think about things a lot, and I'm hard on myself, and I can be hard on others, and I expect the best out of myself, and I expect the best out of others as well. And but underneath all that anger, especially, is fear of being either hurt or of hurting somebody, because of the violence that I've seen in my life and the violence that I know that's in my life. I know that my capacity for being hurt is matched by my capacity for hurting people. Some ways, not even physically, just just actually just by being selfish or being aggressive. But so for me, underneath it all is fear and sorrow. If you want to get to it, it's like those are the things that will drive my anxiety. Will be like fear of being hurt, fear of being exposed, or just the sadness of the things that I endured at a young age that I probably, no kid probably should deal with. But it's been an amazing journey at dealing with the anxiety, because for a long time I didn't realize I had it. I just would get really angsty. Like the way for a lot of guys, anxiety, how it turns up is we get really prickly, and we get really kind of agitated, and we get grumpy, which is really sad, because we're actually really afraid and really feeling a little bit out of control. And so this reaction we have is kind of completely ironic to it all, because we need somebody to come and grab us and hold us, and we repel everybody and scare everybody, which is really weird and ironic. But once I started realizing I had it, and it wasn't just that it wasn't everybody else's fault, and it wasn't just the world's fault. It was something that was going on in me. It's been a huge teacher of all the things that I've been dealing with most of my life. All that anger, all that stuff that I just thought was everything else, it's actually something deeper in me. So it's been a huge journey of self-realization and the power of vulnerability, and then realizing that I see it all around me now. I see it all around me. It's like, I don't know. Do you have children?
Yes.
Yeah. Like when your wife first got pregnant, you just started seeing pregnant people everywhere. It's like, fucking, it's pregnant. Is there always this many pregnant people? There's not. I think there's a little boom in pregnancy. And actually, there's not. It's just that you're seeing it. And I see anxiety everywhere now.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere, and I can see there's a lot of different reasons: social, economic, how fast we move, the quickening of consciousness. It's all taking place. But for me, I realize it's not such a shameful thing. It's not such a isolated thing. It's not a rare thing. It's anxiety is actually part of being a human being, part of being an animal, And I think it either gets the best of you or you can get the best of it. And I've just tried to do the latter. And for me, it's chasing the crazy guy away, which is otherwise known as going for a jog.
Right.
Yeah, I chase the crazy guy away every morning for at least 20 to 30 minutes at the moment. Meditation, diet, sleep, and watching, and trying to realize that my thoughts are not actually me, because I can think a myriad of beautiful and frightening, horrific things, and like us all. I think that's kind of one of the interesting things about being human being is we can ponder our own ponderings.
Mm-hmm.
We can think about what we've just thought, and that can drive you crazy.
Yeah.
But it's also, it can help for some enlightenment. But I think that it can go both ways. It can either get the best of you and ruin your life, or it can actually break you through to the other side and help you get to a point that you couldn't have gotten through without it.
Right.
And that's how I see it, as a life lesson. I see it as a journey. It's your coping mechanisms, and you can only outrun your demons for so long. They will eventually catch up to you at some point. And how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to deal with it by becoming a drug addict, by committing suicide, by cheating on your wife, getting a new Porsche? You're going to deal with it by losing yourself in your work so much that you don't see your kids and you don't care about anybody else. How are you going to just deal with it face on and fucking go, shit happened in my past, and why am I still crying about the shit that my dad did when I was fucking 11? I feel fucking like I should have gotten over it by now. Like, I'm a bit embarrassed by that, but like, fucking deal with it. Let's deal with it for once. Not run away from it, not fucking smoke it under the table. Let's fucking deal with it. And I guess that's, the other journey is just a journey of becoming a man, a journey of becoming a man and not a boy, not having your wife look after you, not when you do get anxiety or something angers you, not having the big temper tantrum, but actually fucking, man, what is it? Oh, you're afraid. Oh, what are you afraid about? Oh, it's because of that. Oh, okay. So that's your feeling. By the way, those are called feelings, and they're okay to have, by the way. And it's better to have them and process them than like having a temper tantrum, because that's actually really immature and not very productive and really unsexy as well, by the way. So, it's actually way more harder to actually be in touch with your feelings, dude. I'm kind of glancing over a whole myriad of different aspects of my life. Yeah. It's definitely, I'm thankful for it,
Sure.
I wasn't for a long time. And it's still an everyday thing to kind of keep it in the right place, because it's, it's like anything that's been hit too much. You're going to have a quick trigger on it. Mm-hmm. And, I've lived a highly adrenalized life from the time I was 8 years old, probably. And so my adrenals are pretty like, woo.
Yeah.
They're ready to go. And it doesn't take much sometimes, Sometimes I have to look at my phone and see 5,000 freaking things I have to do, for the next year. And I'm like,
right.
But I know I'm not the only one. Yeah. I know I'm not. We all have that fucking phone in our back pocket.
That's it.
And every time we hear it go ding, we all get a certain amount of anxiety, because it takes you out of the present moment.
Yeah.
So practicing being in the present is one of the biggest things you can do,
But everything you've just talked about there, just the very fact of acknowledging anxiety and that you have it, I feel like is such a liberating thing. Not pushing it away anymore, just going, I'm feeling this. Just to allow yourself to feel it, I feel like is really liberating.
It is. It was liberating to actually just kind of realize something else was going on, because I was really getting sick and tired of actually getting grumpy at people who were smiling. And I'm like, it can't be the smilers. I'm pretty sure, it can't be those latte drinking smilers. Okay, it has to be me. So once it was a nice realization. Yeah, it is. And I learned that from my wife. My wife is one of the best storytellers I know. One of the most charismatic, powerful, intelligent, eloquent people I know. I'm fucking stoked that she likes me. I really am. I really like that she wanted to fuse her DNA with mine. I was like, woo, what an honor. I am absolutely stoked, and I definitely got the better part of that deal. But she is so vulnerable on stage. Her storytelling is so close to the bone. She can make you cry, and in a second she's making you laugh. And through hearing her talk about her depression and talk about her fears and her pains, I just saw, I literally watched her start, and I watched the audience melt, and I'd watch the audience all become one, and all go, yeah, I'm fucking there too with you, and completely humanized everybody. And I'm like, this is the power of music. It brings us together. It takes down the walls, and it makes us feel like we're not alone.
Mm.
And that's what happens when you tell the truth and you're like, you just have to be vulnerable, rather than fucking John Rambo, this unrealistic version of some dude, So yeah, it's totally empowering.
Yeah.
But it's not a road for the faint-hearted. As I said before in some other interview, it's like you want to be badass and you want to be courageous and you want to be brave. Well, then be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to think you're being badass, courageous and brave by like, nothing touches me,
right.
But that's actually the biggest sign of fear you could possibly have. To be courageous and brave takes a huge amount of trust. Once you start talking about trust, if you if you don't have like some things to talk about and things to introspect about on the subject of trust, then maybe you're not thinking deep enough, because we all got trust issues. We've all been fucked over at some point. And I always believe the trauma happens from not what you see coming, it's from the shit you don't see coming, the shit that sideswipes you. That's the stuff that sticks with you forever. Yeah. That's the stuff that you'll talk about to your therapist. You're like, it was that time when Mrs. Magnet told me that my 8s weren't perfect, and I, from that point on, thought I was dumb. I thought they were great, but whatever it is,
Yeah. So, John, just a couple of things before we finish up. Can you put into words what that moment is like when you close your eyes and you sing?
Well, it depends on how it sounds. Sometimes it sounds good. Sometimes I close my eyes and go, it's pretty shit. Look, I think for me, I'm constantly searching. And I have some pretty high thresholds of feeling alive. I think through trauma and skateboarding and making music to thousands of people, feeling like I'm in the zone. It's a very specific place and time. Sometimes it's a very calm place, sometimes it's a very intense place, and I'm constantly searching for it. There's no rhyme or reason what makes a good show or makes it feel like I'm actually not thinking about anything but letting the music flow through me. That's a very rare state. It's a very rare state. And so when I'm there, it's beautiful. And then I'll search for the next 3 years, looking for the next hit, like a total junkie.
Yeah.
But, it's always brought the best out in me. It never came naturally, I never wanted to do this. This wasn't part of the fucking plan to do this. And so it never came naturally. And I still question myself all the time about, am I good enough to do what I do? But I enjoy it. When it's good, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And when it's not good, it's usually teaching me something and bringing the best out of me, I mean, I'd probably still be sitting around a bucket bong somewhere if I didn't have music, man, like between music and my wife, they brought the best out of me. Yeah. They made me stand up to life. Otherwise, I would have just self-medicated and stayed out of the way, tried to stay out of the limelight. Because essentially I'm an extroverted introvert. So
right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Are you still trying to prove yourself, do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even with all the success, the album sales, the crowds who turn up?
Yeah. Because the mountains are high and divinity is a beautifully infinite thing, and that road of discovering oneness with the cosmos it's a long road, and you can do that through music and you can do that through living life. And I get on stage and I want to have the largest bandwidth possible to be a conduit for something I don't understand, for something divine. And so to do that, I'm having to upgrade my circuitry to get more and more bandwidth, because the bandwidth that I'm talking about is like massive and it's wide and it can fry out your circuitry really easy. So I'm always trying to kind of better myself to be a better conduit. I'm probably thinking about it too much. Yeah, definitely. You could probably just not think about it and let it flow a bit more. Totally. I'll give you that. Hendrix did that. But I do also feel like if you've come Like say these shows coming up, Missy and I, you know, the tickets ain't cheap. The tickets aren't fucking cheap. You've probably had to make a lot of plans to get there. Parking's going to be a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might have to get babysitters, or you might have to just like worked all week for the ticket, you know, because you live in a share house or whatever it may be. When you get there, I want to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be worth it for you, dude. You know, it's not like I'm not the new kid on the freaking block. You know, you've heard about me for a while now. I better be worth your time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to be frank, I hope you're worth my time as well. You know, you know what I mean? Like I'm away from my family as well, and I worked really hard to be here. And I want you to give me just as much as I'm going to give you. It's a symbiotic relationship. And,
fair point.
And so, you know, expectation is probably the worst thing you could possibly ever do to yourself. But I do want to bring the very best of myself to a situation, because if not, go home. Let's all go home.
Mm-hmm.
You should go home and spend your money on somebody else who's worth your time. I should stay home and be with my people, my friends, and my house, and my dog, and my garden, because you know, like, so if I'm going to be there, bring your A game, and not because you're 20 years in or you're 44, because like if you're there, bring it.
Yeah,
go hard or go home. Like I really believe that. Like, might be way too harsh. Maybe way too much bravado or whatever, but I just feel that. It's like 1,000,001 extremely talented people out there. Extremely talented people. And a lot more than me. Like I work really hard to be talented. Some people are naturally talented, you know, like so yeah, I want to be worth your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
And very lastly, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit's due. Who would you give credit to for helping you along your musical journey? Are there people who have given you advice, or?
Man, there's been so many people. I mean, like so many amazing people. It's like it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise an artist, you know. I'd say firstly it'd be my grandmother, then my parents. My parents always believed in me. They were happy for me to drop out of college and to play next to a rubbish bin at the Fremantle markets. You know, they always believed in me. They taught me about hard work. And, you know, hard work will get you through anything. I really believe that. Going back, there's 1,000,001 talented people who are naturally more talented than me, but hard work will get you further than natural talent a lot of times. And work your ass off. But then, you know, my auntie who lent me $300 to make my first cassettes.
Yeah.
You know, and the woman who shook her head at me.
Right.
The Fremantle Markets manager that kicked me out of the Fremantle Markets, I was never allowed to busk there again because the crowds are too big. And he pushed me out into the main pitch where Wondro and Trent were, you know, like, and, you know, birthed me out into the streets. Phil, my manager, who managed Mojo's Bar and gave me my first gigs, you know, with Linda Bull and Paul Kelly and, you know, you name it. And Sebastian Chase from MGM, he's been my longest, you know, one of my longest partners. You know, he distributes my albums. He's the biggest distributor, or one of the biggest distributors of independent albums in the country. A huge lover of music. I call him the Gandalf of Australian music. And there's 1,000,001. And my wife, like my wife is the biggest. You know, there's 1,000,001 people who have just believed in this dream. Believed in it and believed in the manic look in my eye. And, and gone, well, he believes it. I'll believe in him too. So I'm very thankful for all. And my band members, man, I have not 1,000,001, but I've had a few band members that have just become aunts and uncles to my kids and you know, let blood on the tape and left blood on the stage everywhere we've been, you know, so. I'm thankful to my team. Yeah.
That's
Being
great.
Independent, you're very dependent on everybody.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, John. Thank you once again for
Thank
having
you
a chat
for the
with me.
therapy session. I appreciate it.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. Thanks for listening, and thanks to John for taking the time to chat. This episode was recorded at New Holland Studios in Darlinghurst, and it was engineered by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale. It was also co-produced by Bo Adams. The theme and incidental music were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, feel free to share it amongst your friends and jump online and rate and review it. And remember, for all your music credits and to get the story behind the music, head to jaxsta.com, and while you're there, sign up for a free 30-day trial of Jaxsta Pro, the essential tool for all music industry professionals. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thank you for listening.